them because they were really quick. And the restaurants in Rwanda were very quick, and they were really tasty, apparently, and they were really inexpensive. So everyone got them. If you don't eat meat, but you eat fish, they also had ones with fish on it. But fish isn't very common in Rwanda because it's a landlocked country, which means that other countries border it on every side. It doesn't have any room for the ocean or the sea or anything, so they don't get a lot of fresh fish there. And we mentioned like soda and water. Water there, and compared to the United States, like a bottle, it would probably be about $2 here. Soda would probably be about not even $1. So obviously more people are going to get soda. It's the same in China?
Yeah, the same in China. The drink in China, also the food is really cheap. For a bottle of water, it's no more than $50. So
wow.
Yeah, it's very cheap.
Wow. Yeah, certain things in Rwanda compared to the US are a little more expensive, such as water because it's so scarce. Also boxes of cereals that we eat, like Trix and Cocoa Puffs and things like that. Lucky Charms, those are my favorite. Those are super expensive in Rwanda. One, because they don't really eat cereals for breakfast, and two, because they have to import them from places like the United States or China or things like that. So they don't really eat that there. We talked about soda and water. In Rwanda, beer is actually really common too because it's very inexpensive, like soda. They have this thing called banana beer, which they make like from bananas somehow, like they fermented and everything, which I thought was really cool because bananas grow everywhere in Rwanda, so I thought that was really resourceful of them. What about in China? I know there's like sake, or is that Japanese? I think that's Japanese.
Sake? Mm-hmm. Actually, I don't know that. What is sake?
Oh, it's like whenever I go to like Asian restaurants, it's like an alcoholic like soy drink.
Oh, sure. I see. Usually in China, when people go to restaurant, they don't order alcohol. Or drink. They just drink water, and they bring water with themselves everywhere. So that's very interesting. And for the restaurants you just mentioned in Rwanda is quick or slow?
Restaurants in Rwanda are extremely slow. Like in the US, you can wait maybe like 10, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes for your food if it's a nice restaurant, right? But in Rwanda, even if it's like a quick place, there's no fast food restaurants in Rwanda, but even if it's like a quicker place, it will take at least 20 or 30 minutes. And if it's like a sit-down place, it will take maybe an hour depending on your party. Yeah, it was very long.
So most of the time people will eat at home?
A lot of the time. I know like tourists, they mostly eat out, of course, like we were. People who live in Rwanda, they mostly cook, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the same as China. But in China, the restaurants are not always very slow. It really depends on what you order. For example, if you order the noodles that we see in the previous game, it will be kind of slowly because they have to boil the water and boil every ingredients after you order it. But if you order something else like fried vegetables, it will be quicker because vegetables will be easier to be cooked. So it really depends on what you order.
Very interesting. Okay, so do we want to go to the Venn diagram activity with them? Do you have anything else you want to mention before that?
Yep. So as the game, we just did some noodles named after their cooking method and way. This is the typical naming way because there are too many kinds of noodles in China. So if you memorize them by how to cook them, it will be easier to memorize them. And broadly, the noodles are categorized into three kinds, as I just mentioned before, based on what they are made of. So wheat, rice, and starch. So northern Chinese people prefer wheat-made noodles because wheat is one of the most popular and main agricultural plants in northern area. But different from North people, Southern people prefer rice noodles because of the same reason. Rice is one of the most popular agricultural plants in southern area. And the starch noodles is evenly distributed across the whole China. So it doesn't depend on the climate or preference. It's just it is popular in each area. And why the noodles is so popular in China? Have you ever think about this question? Okay. Have you ever think about this?
Noodles in China?
Uh-huh.
I think about when I see noodles, I think of China because they're definitely like they're linked with that in my mind, like lo mein that I always get. I don't really know why noodles are so popular in China or where they came from.
Okay. So because Chinese people, they really believe that each meal should contain an equal division between grains, starch, and wheat, vegetables, fruits, and meat. So the noodles is one of the grains they rely on that can provide them this harmonious dietary balance. So in a bowl of noodles, you can have anything you want. So like the simplest bowl of noodle, the cooking process will include 3 steps. The first step is boil the water and put the noodles in it and wait until it's half cooked. Now the second step is cook everything or any ingredients and seasoning into the noodles. And the third step is just wait until it's all deep cooked. So it is very simple, and there is no fixed recipe for Chinese people to cook noodles because you can cook like whatever you want. Because of its flexibility and convenience, noodles, and also it's healthy, so it becomes one of the most popular foods in China.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's very different from me in the US because I know like when I cook, I always have to use a recipe. Like I can't just like cook anything by myself. So that's very different.
Okay. So actually I have a video. Is that possible to show?
We'll see.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we have questions whenever you finish.
Cool. So the next part, I will show you a video clip. It's adapted from a food documentary, which is the most popular documentary in China. The documentary's name is Taste of China. So we will see. It has English subtitles, so you can see. And I will tell you a little bit of the brief introduction. This tells about a story of a family making noodles in like rare China. Okay, since it is not showing, I'm gonna put the link into the chat. You can. I can probably do this later, but I will send you the link of the video. So this video talks about that in China, the family spirit is very important. So elders really concerned what they will leave for their next generations. And also because you cannot leave everything you want to your next generation because the materials is limited. So they want to leave a kind of craft to the next generation, and they hope that their children can have something to live on. But in the modern China, there are a lot of career choices you can choose from. So few people still live on making crafts, or there are still few people making noodles by themselves. Now in the modern China, people just cook noodles for fun. Yeah. For example, during the Spring Festival and other festivals, when people get together, they will make really sophisticated cuisines together to enjoy the time with family. So it's different from before.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Do we want to go to compare Rwanda and China in our little assessment? All right, so now we're going to do a little compare and contrast thing with a Venn diagram. We're going to compare Rwanda and China and how their foods and their practices are similar and different. And then we can also relate them to the United States. Cool. So you mentioned that sometimes eggs can be for dessert and things like that. Mm-hmm. What do they typically eat for desserts in China? Because I know in Rwanda, it's basically just like fruit, and then there's also this thing called sugar cane. They have it here in the U.S. too. Has anybody had it? I know I hadn't until I went there. No? Well, it's basically like a big long stick, and it has like a coating around it that you cut off, and then you like suck on it, and it tastes like sugar. So I eat that too. What about in China?
The interesting thing in China is like people usually don't eat dessert like American people do. I feel like in UNC Chapel Hill, in our dining hall, there are a lot kind of like desserts you can have after the lunch and the dinner, like in the afternoon. But in China, people usually don't eat that, probably because it's kind of hard to make them. So people really love fruits. It's like between the meals, they will eat yogurt, and apples and orange and any other kinds of fruits, but they don't eat dessert a lot.
Oh, very interesting. So they're kind of similar in that, yeah? So they just don't really eat much dessert, just fruits and things?
Right.
Okay. And then we mentioned China has like a lot of ingredients in each dish, and their main focus is noodles and things like that, right?
Yep.
And in Rwanda, it's very simple cuisine. It's mostly just like the potatoes and the pasta, not many ingredients, not too spicy, not too bland or anything. So I guess that would be a difference.
I think that's slightly different. So in China, people really think there's an old saying that food is the sky. So Chinese people really look highly on what they eat, and they are willing to spend a lot of time on cooking foods for their family and their children. So when I grew up, my mom usually wakes up like 1 hour before I wake up to make breakfast for me, which is very sweet. And so people like to cook sophisticated and complex foods.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned time value. Do you want to reiterate that?
Yeah, cool. That's kind of interesting. I feel young people will not spend a lot of time on cooking, but because in my family, my grandparents really love cooking. They love cooking. They cook every day, but my uncle and my aunt, they like to eat out in the restaurant. So it depends on the different lifestyles.
Yeah, it does. And I said that was similar in Rwanda, that it just depends. Some people cook their food, some people go out to restaurants. Mostly if you live like in the capital, which is where I was staying in Kigali, they would go out to eat because there were so many restaurants there. But out in the countryside, there wouldn't be that many. So, yeah, that's how would we phrase that? Practices of eating, I guess. And if any of you have things you want to compare about things we've talked about or things that you already know, just type it in the chat and we can add it to our Venn diagram. Okay, and then how about like the family value? How do families interact with food or make food?
I think that's the biggest difference. In the US, usually when you go to the restaurant, will be like each person have a dish, right? It's like you order yours and I order mine. But in China, if you go to restaurant, it will be several people order a couple of dishes and we share. And for also the same in family. For example, the noodles, we will cook a really, lots of noodles, and everybody just gets a little bit from a big bowl of noodles. So people love sharing, but here it's not very common to share on food.
Yeah, I know in Rwanda they did that too. They would just have a bunch of big dishes and everyone would share them. I know in the US not many people do that. Like when you go to restaurants, you just get your own thing. Maybe you try it and things like that. I know with my family though, we always get like big things and then all share it because we're Italian, so like of course we share food. But yeah, it's similar in that, so that will go in the middle column. Anything else you can think of?
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's the basics that we covered. Obviously there's more, and definitely if you're comparing it to the US, there's differences. We all have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's all pretty similar, and like breakfast is light, things like that. Pricing was a little different. Rwanda had a lot of soda. China didn't. The US obviously does. Who drinks soda? Thumbs up if you do. I do. Probably shouldn't. It's not the healthiest, right? We should probably drink milk or water.
It's tasty.
But it tastes good. So I guess we'll wrap it up. I know you guys have a few questions. Several questions. Good. So if we want to start that.